24 years old, I had never been on a dating app before. My boyfriend Brandon and I were high school sweethearts and had grown up in a small rural town in Illinois, just outside of Woodstock. I'd always thought we were going to get married, pop out a few kids, and I'd be a chipper little homemaker just like my mom and nearly every other woman I knew. But when Brandon and I went to college in Chicago, things changed. Once I saw what the world looked like outside of suburbia, the lure of domestic life was lost on me. The thought of PTA meetings, Sunday school, and baby showers no longer seemed appealing after spending nights in the city with polyamorous artists who drank and partied until 4 a.m. on a Thursday. Brandon had been the only man I'd ever been with, until I ended things and then had my first one-night stand with a guy I met at a midnight showing of Rocky Horror 2 days after the fact. After graduation, Brandon went back home, but I stayed in Chicago. He thought it was just a phase and assumed I'd come back home to him eventually. I knew it was wishful thinking on his part and hoped he'd find another woman soon. I would have been lying if I said I didn't still think about him and love him. But it didn't feel right settling down with one person for the rest of my life. So there I was, spending the first night in my new apartment on a dating app, swiping right on anyone who made my skin flush. I was surprised when I matched with a tall and slender blonde woman. A woman. The thought had never occurred to me. But as I stared at my phone's screen and my eyes traveled down her long neck to her nearly flat chest, where her nipples stood erect against a white tank top, I felt my pulse quicken and my cheeks grow hot. Her name was Veronica, and I found myself imagining her body against mine under the covers of my bed. Then my phone chimed. "Hey, Jamie. You're super cute. What are you up to tonight?" She had sent me a message through the app. Was this real? Was I being catfished? "Aw, thanks, Veronica," I replied. "You're gorgeous. I was actually planning on going down to Joe's for a drink. Care to join me?" Then a video chat prompt appeared. She wanted to FaceTime with me. I hesitantly accepted through squinting eyes, prepared to be greeted by a naked, middle-aged man masquerading as a sex goddess. Instead, I was greeted by Veronica's face, the corner of her mouth turned upward in a sexy, boyish smile. "Oh, good," I blurted out. "You're real." She laughed, and her bright blue eyes sparkled. We met at the bar about an hour later, and the chemistry was undeniable. Every time she leaned in close so I could hear her over the crowd, feeling her warm breath on my neck made me dizzy with anticipation for more. I learned that she was originally from California, loved Wes Anderson movies, and was an EMT. After a couple of hours, she put a sinewy hand on my hip, and I felt each finger lightly pressing into my flesh, gently pulling me toward her. I was covered in goosebumps. "Do you want to go back to my place?" Her pleading eyes stared into mine, and her mouth parted slightly. Her full bottom lip begged to be kissed. I just nodded, unable to speak. I wanted her, and I knew she wanted me. My body ached for her with desire unlike anything I'd ever experienced with Brandon. I moved into her body, unable to wait, my breasts brushing against her own firm chest. I felt her fingers slowly slide down from my hip to my inner thigh, just under my miniskirt. My nose touched hers, and I managed to gasp out, "How far away do you live from here?" 10 minutes and one agonizing Uber ride later, Veronica unlocked the door to her apartment, took my hand, and led me into the brownstone, dimly illuminated by string lighting. Wasting no time, she took my face in her strong hands and brought her luscious lips to mine. Our tongues met, and I moaned as I stood on my toes, lacing my fingers around the back of her neck so I could pull myself closer to her tall frame. She released my face and grabbed my ass, pulling me up and onto the kitchen counter. Veronica ran her lips and tongue down my neck, and then spread my legs apart. She paused. "Can I go down on you?" I responded by pushing her head between my legs. "You're so wet, baby." I sighed as she pushed my panties aside, and her warm tongue pressed flat against my dripping slit. She explored every inch of me as she pushed her nose to my clit. I could feel the vibrations from her moans against my pussy, and they reverberated throughout my entire body. God, she knew what she was doing. She had the same body I did. Of course she knew how to please a woman. My face tingled as my breathing grew ragged, and I thrust myself into her face. I'm going to come. I squirt. Veronica looked up at me with those piercing blue eyes and whispered, "Come for me, baby," and then took my hips in her hands, bearing her face into me again. I felt a wave of euphoria wash over me. While covering her face with my juices, the room spun, and I felt her kiss the inside of my thigh. "Let me know when you want more."